Well, welcome back to our course, Writing 242 Technical Communication. We're now continuing to work in our second section here, talking about genres and microgenres of technical communications. We started about talking your career, thinking of a resume, cover letter, portfolio. Those are important things. We then provided some insights into the types of technical descriptions that we would have. And now with this lecture, we're going to be talking about technical descriptions and specifications. What you're going to start to observe that there's a process that keeps coming up again and again in each one of these chapters. And so you can be using some of those things to have a template or a methodology that you can be using as you're going forward. So let's go ahead and get into the material for this lecture here. And so first, here are the things that we will learn in this chapter. We will use descriptions and specifications in technical workplaces. This is going to be quite extensive. You will have some intellectual property technology that's part of what your company does. And so you're going to have descriptions and specifications that lay that out. You'll be planning to do research needed to write a technical description or specification, say if there's new things that you're trying to codify, to capture. And then you will need to partition objects, places, or processes into major and minor parts. So you'll have to figure out how to package things appropriately. You also will be considering how to organize and draft technical descriptions and specifications. And so having a methodology for doing that. And then think of, well, what is a style? And so you want to be using a plain style with a page layout and graphics that highlight and illustrate important concepts and so make it readable. So there are various types of documents for various purposes in the scientific and technical workplace. And so you can have technical descriptions. It could be a white paper or something like that. It's just talking about some concepts or some special capability. You can have specifications, and you can have anything from a mill standard. If you've never heard that term, there's ways how things are organized into specifications. IEEE, other organizations and entities have ways that just you define how you're supposed to put a specification. But anyway, you're talking about specifics about how things function and having requirements specified in there. Patents, this is how you capture your intellectual property and make sure that it's protected by the law. You could have field notes, things that you've captured out in the field as you're trying to show how things work in a operational environment, or you can have observations. So it can range anywhere from very formal to less formal kinds of things that you're trying to capture in technical descriptions. And each one of these are technical communication forms that you'll be likely having to deal with. Okay, well, let's talk about writing technical descriptions and specifications in this next area. So you want to start by considering the 5 W and how questions. And so you're seeing this is coming up on a regular basis, and there is a little bit of a slight differences each time it comes up. But go ahead and take a chance to be thinking about this. Who might need this description? Who are the primary, secondary, and tertiary and gatekeeper people that would be reading this description? Why is the description needed? What details and facts should the description include? Where will the description be used, and how will the description be used? So once again, as you start to figure out those types of questions, it's going to really help to frame how you're going to go about doing this technical communication. So define the subject, purpose, readers, and context of the use for your description. And then for a question to think about, how do technical descriptions support quality management, say like an ISO standard? You'll get exposed to different things. And so this would be one of the areas where potentially you may want to be considering as you're going through this. So what are the basic features of a technical description? A technical description can be part of a larger document, or it can be standalone. A standalone description has the following features. The title, It's really important to have a good informative title, because this is what it's going to distinguish it from something else. And so as you're developing products in this course in the future, keep that in mind. Having an introduction. Sometimes if it's a real long document, it might have something like an abstract or an executive summary. So make sure that you have something that it can give a framing so the person can quickly get into the content and understand what's going to go on in this technical description. Have the body paragraph. So this is where you get into the details. Having graphics is really important to help to make it readable and accessible. So having photos, different types of artwork that are graphical, and also having tables. All of those get into the area of graphics. And finally, you want to conclude and state what you have described in this document. So plan research. This is something important. So when you're doing the research, you want to be doing background research. What is the state of the art? What are things that need to take place? Is there a new level of capability that you're shooting for? In terms of making this be communicating the message in a useful and enjoyable way, you could be using your senses. How can you start to be thinking about conveying your words and your expressions in ways that would be appealing? Taking measurements, and so recording that information and make sure that you're able to report that. So this is all the information that you're going to be using as you're getting ready for this. So if you're using your senses, what was the experiences you had as you're engaging with this research and you look at this new technology or approach or capability? Taking measurements so you have the specifics, you can get into facts and figures. You want to describe the motion and change, anything that's new or that you have developed. You wanted to describe the context. What kind of environment is this capability meant to operate? And you want to create or locate graphics. How can you best capture this in an appealing way? So it's going to be something that will be easily and for a person to get excited about it. Finally, make sure that you ask subject matter experts. This may not be your area of expertise, and what do they say? And so getting the wisdom and the insight from individuals like that will be very helpful. Okay, now the second step after you've done your research is you want to partition your subject. And so you can partition your subject by features, and so take them one at a time, by functions or by stages of a process. Logically mapping can help break down and partition your subject. And so here we're talking about this in a narrative. Here is a kind of a graphic, and so you want to create this logical mapping. And so you can be thinking of the items, place, or processes, and you can have, say, the major parts. And so each one of those, you talk about that one at a time. So here's major part number one. It's composed of 3 supporting parts, and you can talk about those one at a time. So you have a very structured process where it's going to make it easy for the reader to access that. And so if they need to get to a certain area, they can immediately go to that part, the major part down to a minor part, and use this document as a database, if you will, and easily get that information that they require. So step 3 is the organize and draft part of this. And so you want to use a specific and precise title. So just remember, this is really important and informative, and very precise title is going to be helpful. Include an introduction with an overall description. The first sentence or 2 are especially important, so make sure that you think about that. Include a description by senses, similes, analogies, or metaphors. This is how you're trying to be creative and inviting with the way that you're writing your prose. And finally, have a conclusion. Those are the things that you want to be thinking about as you're starting to organize and draft your product and putting these things into bins, if you will. What needs to be in that description? What would be a precise and specific title? What would be the experiences you had that you want to include in the description? And then finally have the takeaway with the conclusion. So in terms more about the description by the senses, similes, analogies, and metaphors, think about this as a question. A heart is a pump, is a metaphor. Why might these kinds of descriptors be useful in technical descriptions? If you can engage the reader to be thinking in terms of more than one or more senses, it's going to make them have a lot more of an affinity with what you're talking about. So use vivid detail. So whenever possible, leveraging that. So it brings your subject to life. Sensory descriptions. This can be relating back to what you found in your research. Similes. Maybe you're trying to draw an analogy from one domain to another that might help the audience to be seeing this. Maybe this is a whole new technology area. And so that might be especially important. An analogy, give them something that can comparison of, well, what is the advantage of this based on, say, something that you know your readers would be familiar with. And this is why it's nice to do that research to make sure you know who your readers are, who your audience is. And then using metaphors effectively. So metaphors equates two different things. The heart as a pump is an example, as we just talked about here for the discussion question. Now into step 4, the style, design, and medium. The style should be simple and straightforward. A lot of technical communication, it's going to be this sort of thing. The design should clarify and support the text. So have a plain and simple style. You want to have a page layout that fits, things that are elegant and simple and easy to access, the graphics that illustrate the concepts. And so even if you have a graphic, sometimes that can be all that is needed to really catch the reader and give the story in a graphic in either a table or a figure of some sort. And mediums that allow easy access. And so you want to be thinking about the various types of access. It could be a written document, maybe they have a hard copy, maybe it's a PDF, maybe it's something that's shown in some type of media that they can visualize and use on a computer, tablet, or cell phone. Okay, that's it for this chapter. So thank you very much.